Now, just a disclaimer, I'm going to make this up as I go. Um, I, I don't have a slideshow or anything really prepared. I don't even want to talk for 45 minutes. I would love to have discussion because I mean, are all of us teachers in some capacity, any level, wherever? Um, no? Oh, do you work with teachers though?
No,
Weren't you at a university? Okay.
I make training videos for a software company,
Okay.
for an engineering software company.
Okay.
Well, you're welcome to talk to us teachers anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, I do have a degree in education.
Well,
Teach on a corporate level.
that's teaching. Yeah, that's good. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my classroom just to give you a perspective of this flipped learning, flipped classroom thing, because there are a lot of different definitions out there, and a lot of them are very poor. Some of them are very good, and most of them fall kind of in the middle, which is fine. But anyways, if you want my contact information, again, my name is Brian. I'm always on Twitter. That's my blog is there, and if you change that to /learn, like I'm here to learn, that's my class website. All of my materials are up there, so you can see, and I'll show you during the thing today if you're just curious on how I structure it. But this bit.ly link, that's flip pages, 2 P's, flipped pages. That is a Digo list, which is like delicious or what's the other, dig, just dig, bookmark. Anyways, stumble upon, yeah, I mean, same idea, but it's a list of just articles, people, websites, whatever that I find that is good in reference to flipped learning. And so I've got like 100 and some odd articles saved in there now, so you can spend as much time there or as little time there as you would like. And I do bookmark my own stuff. I don't know if that's conceited or not, but anyways, sure. But yeah, anyways, feel free to pull anything from here, contact me. I generally don't give out my email address just because I get spam, but I'm happy to give it to you if you want my email address at the end of the day today. So, flipped learning is not Khan Academy. It is not, oh, hi everyone at home too. Hi. It is not Khan Academy necessarily. It is not kids sitting in cubicles with headphones on in school like the Carpe Diem school out in Santa Monica. It is not students listening to an hour for every class every single night at home. That's kind of the way the media has portrayed it and the way non-educators have seen it, and it's the way people are expecting schools to go, and that's really scary to me. Especially when I think about that school, the one that's using Khan Academy as a curriculum, because as teachers we can look at that and we say, hey, these are great resources for examples or extensions or things that can apply to what we're doing in schools, but it's not a curriculum. I mean, it's not even taught well. You know, the history, who was the history teacher yesterday talking about, yeah, I loved what you said. It made me so happy. I mean, but even the science and math videos aren't that great. There's a lot of really silly mistakes in there that would confuse kids. So personally, I tend not to use Khan Academy. That's just a decision that I've made because I know what my kids need, when they need it, and how they need it presented. And I can do that, and I cannot get that from him.
Somebody's really excited to listen to you.
Oh, good.
Yes, I didn't realize you had that.
Woo! Makes me feel good. So what is flipped learning? Flipped learning, the flip in the learning is not necessarily where or when the learning happens. The flip is the responsibility for me. So instead of me standing up like I am, or crouching right now, and you all are listening so nicely, and you're expecting me to just give you the stuff, it's totally opposite. I will hand my students the resources, and I'll say, here's everything. Here's where you need to be by Friday. What do you need? And then I wander around the room, and so I've got kids that are, rocket scientists, and they just go off and they work, and they're done by Wednesday, and then they do history or Spanish or English the rest of the week in my class. Awesome. Then I've got kids that are on the low end, and I sit with them for 10 or 15 minutes a day, and I work with them every single day to make sure they are getting the instruction that they need. And if that's me sitting down and reteaching something live, Great, I'll do it because I have the time to do it. Then I've got people in the middle, and I will make sure I'm checking in with people every day and asking them how they are and what they're working on and what they're doing. Or they'll call me over and say, hey, we've been struggling with this for a day or so. Would you mind giving us another example? Or could you help us do this or do that? And so they're the ones really driving where the instruction is coming from. I'm either providing it online ahead of time, or I'm providing it real time in the class, or I'm pointing them to other places to get that instruction. But they're the ones who are choosing when and where that instruction happens. And I think that's really powerful for screencasting. And I think it's the first step to improving the system that we're in now and getting away from these, scheduled chunks of time because, I've learned more, well, not more, I learn the best when I can integrate it, and we know that that's how learning works. So my brain is very analytical. I think mathematically and scientifically. That's why I teach biology and chemistry. But if I can hear it in context, I can learn something about neuroscience through the context of a historical article talking about psychology development. We can look at it so many different ways, but we don't always have opportunities to do that for our students on a consistent basis. And so, by giving students the opportunity to learn when they want, where they want, and how they want, they're able to connect it how they want. So I had someone who was really, really interested in aviation, and he learned his entire gas laws unit in chemistry through the lens of aviation, flying. Why do planes fly? It's all gases in physics, and that's how he did it best. The kid next to him could care less about aviation. So he just learned the material the way I presented it, which is fine. But then the following unit, when we were doing thermochemistry, he was, and that's explosions. He was, so excited to learn about fire and explosions and bombs and all this stuff, and he just dove into weaponry, really, is what he wanted to learn about. So through that lens, he was able to engage with the chemistry. So the content is not the important piece anymore. The context that I am giving students an opportunity to build their learning around because I'm screencasting is really allowing them to gather that content any way they want. So when I talk about choice in my classroom, I'm not saying they choose to learn it or not to learn it. I mean, that is a choice that they're making, but they're also choosing, the path that they take to get from point A to point B. And screencasting can do that. And so, I'm excited that we're all here because, when I'm making my recordings, they're boring to a degree, I think. And so I'm going to start revamping them because there are some that need to be revised and edited. But what I'm going to be trying to do is using things like the TechSmith Smart Player now. They've got this thing on the PC side. They have the quizzing, which is great. They've got this thing called hotspots where, like a YouTube annotation, as the video is playing, you get those pop-ups like the choose your own adventure thing. I found a good one. I'll show you later. But you have to click on something and engage with the video. I'm going to start using that more with them. So finding ways to use the basic idea of screencasting to build choice in, even simple choices like I think the answer is B, and then it takes them to a different point in the video where you're right or no, you're wrong. And then in class, they're either working all that flipped classroom lingo that you hear. They're working collaboratively. They're doing PBL. They're doing labs. They're doing whatever. It can be whatever your class needs it to be. There's no one way to do it. And I think that's the other thing that the media is really skewed, is saying that the flipped classroom is kids watching videos at home and then doing the work in school. Yeah, there are some people doing it that way, but that's not the only way to do it. It's not even the most popular way. Dave, you've done this for a year-ish, right? Are you at home in school, like separated like that, or? We're supposed to use microphones. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. Maybe just summarize that.
I teach at-risk general chemistry. It's basically a chemistry class teaching to the test. And they don't like to watch the videos, so it's been kind of a fight. And they also need a lot more remediation and teaching than just watching the videos.
Mm-hmm. But can the videos help you with that remediation?
Yeah.
And does that happen in class sometimes?
Yeah, it does most of the time. And I'm along with you as Khan Academy. When I watched a few made so many mistakes, it would confuse my kids even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, yeah.
So I just have a question. Is the children the reason they're not watching the videos because maybe they don't have the resources at home to watch them on. Because I worked with at-risk teens, and a lot of people have no clue what poor conditions these children exist under at home.
For the most part, no. I think maybe one student didn't have access at home. Another girl said she had an internet but no computer because her computer was broken, but she was the one that consistently watched the videos every day. And so she got to do it. And a lot of my kids get access through their phone, so I do a mobile version of my classroom.
Yeah, and that's what I found too. And that's something I was going to tag on and say. Ramsey Muslam, he's a chemistry teacher out in San Francisco. I was talking to him last year, and he said, and I asked him that same thing. I said, how do you get around the tech access issue? And he said the first thing he asks his class every year is, okay, how many of you get on Facebook every day? And if every hand goes up, he knows his kids have access. And so and I've started doing that, so I went into school last year and I said, how many of you get on Facebook every day? And 99% of the hands went up. I had one or two, and that's when I would work with them individually. But also, if we're thinking about the class time, right? If my lectures are recorded, when I need to use lecture, and I'm not even saying you have to, but when direct instruction or a screencast is the best way to teach something, do they have to watch it at home to get the benefit of it? No, I mean that's ludicrous, right? So if they're in class and watching a video, I don't know why they're using it in class. Maybe the night before they had a football game that went late, or they were traveling, or they worked. So an example I've been giving this year was really fascinating to me. Is I had one group of students that did every single thing I assigned all year long in class. They were super efficient with their class time. And they took every single week. On Monday they started, and on Friday they finished. And they never did anything on the weekends because they both worked like 40 hours a week outside of school, 17-year-olds. And I got that because I worked in high school too. I had to pay my own way. Mom and Dad said, you have a car, you can get a job. And I was like, okay. So they did everything in school, and I was there to help them, and they were great. I had a group that would watch the lectures at home when I assigned a lecture, or they would do some component of it at home, and then in school they would work on the challenge problems that I would give them. They would do the labs, they would read articles together as groups and discuss them, and they split the time. But again, it was their decision. I just said, here's what you have to get done. I don't care when and where it happens, but as long as it's done, I'm good. And they did that. And so that was fun to watch too. But then this third group is the one that I've really been wrestling with. And they would come into school, ask me a couple questions, and then they would work on Spanish the rest of the time. More often than not, it was Spanish. And so, at first it really bugged me because I'd be walking around and I'd say, why are you working on Spanish? This is chemistry. And I thought to myself, well, that's dumb. They're working on Spanish because they need the time to work on Spanish, and this is the time they're together. So what's the big deal? And the conclusion I came to is that it's not a big deal. Because they had access to my stuff, they were staying accountable to me and doing what I asked them to do, and they were being proactive about it. They never turned anything in late. They were on top of their quizzes, on top of their tests, the articles, everything was happening. It just didn't happen in my classroom, which is fine. And again, it's just simply because I'm recording that, but then, that gets into that first thing, like, if you are recording your lectures, how is your class time going to change? It has to change somehow. Or how is that training time going to change? What are you going to do in your class, or what options are you going to give them during that time when they are yours to push them as learners, whether they're students or whether they're teachers or staff members that you're training? And that's up to you to decide. And for me, it was letting kids work on what they needed to work on. For you, it might be something different, where they're working on a PBL activity, where they're doing something for their community or something like that at home.
We had a question from Peggy asking if you can really use the flipped classroom approach in elementary school, 3rd or 4th grade to be specific, younger kids.
Okay, we have Erin Klein here. She's a 2nd grade teacher.
Hi, I've actually used it a little bit in my 2nd grade classroom. I use EduCreations, which is a free iPad app, And my kids actually create some videos too. My daughter started doing it. She's 7. She's going to be, well, now she just turned 8, but she's going to be a 3rd grader. And even my little boy, Jacob, who's 4 years old, he uses the app, and he makes letter sound videos to practice phonemic awareness skills. And yeah, absolutely. I think, iPad apps, especially doing flipped learning at kindergarten, is even possible. So I don't think that you can start them too early. I think it's just engaging with technology at home is all it is. It's just making learning fun, interactive, and engaging. And I don't think that it has to be a secondary or beyond level for flipped learning.
Yeah, and I want to tag onto that. What I see, oh, that's messed up. What I see most elementary classes doing is they'll pick certain concepts or ideas, and they do it as like a learning center or something like that. If you're doing, stations during the day. So again, it's that whole idea that we're looking at this philosophy really, that we want to open up our classroom or flatten the classroom or whatever adjective to your classroom, using technology in meaningful ways to do that. So while in elementary school, it's definitely not appropriate to say, all right, kids, on Friday we're going to do this, and then just let them run free during the week, because they're not cognitively there. But you still can challenge them in meaningful ways in elementary. And middle and high school, it's the same thing. And I just think it builds. And so if we can start building those skills in an elementary setting, baby stepping forward, by the time they're in 6th, 7th grade, we can give them a little bit more control. And then by the time they're in high school, if I could have my way, high school would have flexible hours. So kids would be accountable for a certain time during the week to be in the building. If it's 3 hours a day, great. If they come in for a full day, great. But they would be determinant of their schedule, and they would go to the teachers they need. They would get the help that they need when they need to be there. They would use it as a learning community center rather than come and sit for 7 hours, then go home and do it again. And hopefully we can do this. But one thing I also forgot to mention, I was supposed to do how-tos and not-tos. If you cannot, it goes back to that access question. If you ask that question and not many of your kids have tech access, please don't rely on screencasting. If you do not provide the infrastructure or the resources or whatever your kids need, or if you can't get support to do that, like I was in a, my first 2 years of teaching, I was in a school that did not have one-to-one, but the principal gave me permission to let my kids use their iPads or phones or whatever, and that was great. My 3rd year teaching, I was in a one-to-one program, and so that took care of it. Next year, I'm in a new school again. We're not one-to-one, but I asked for permission again to let them use their stuff, whatever they have. And so I've just approached it as a discussion and said most of our kids have an iPod or something that they can use. Another thing I've done is I've written local businesses that are getting rid of old laptops or computers, and I said, hey, I'm a teacher. Would you like to donate your computer to my classroom? And so for the business, it could be a tax write-off because it's a donation. But also now that business can say, hey, we support education in the community where these kids are. So that's another way to approach that tech access issue. So, and then donorschoose.org is another one. Those projects are usually asked to be kept like $500 or less. So you can't go out and buy like a class set of iPads or anything, but you could, I'm going to do a Donors Choose this year to get like little lapel mics for my students so they can start recording their own videos with, sound there and not just, everything happening around the room. What else? I don't know. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I don't like talking that much. Do you want to see how I run my stuff? Would that help? Okay. So I do not have a good projection right now, so let's fix that. I have not been in a building that used a learning management system that I have liked, and I'm really picky, and that's probably a flaw in some degree. But there we go. My first school was Google Apps, and so I used a Google site, and then I moved, and so I switched everything over to WordPress. And there we go. No. Let me turn off these notifications. Oops. Okay. Let me stop seeing Aaron's face. Who is that? So this is just a WordPress website, and this is like more than your basic one. I took a summer and I learned a little bit about coding and some modification stuff, but this is just what I chose. So if you have a Moodle site or data to use live binders, right, or if you've got Haiku or Canvas or Google Apps and you have a Google site, you don't have to model this. This is just what has worked for me in the past. I learned very quickly that the more clicks my students have to do, it's an inverse relationship. So the more clicks they have, the lower the work happens, because they're so like stressing out about the clicks. And so I tried to streamline everything. So I just split it into biology and chemistry, and everything is organized by chapters sequentially. And I organize all of my videos the same way. So in particular, this first chapter, just scientific investigation, there is nothing in this chapter that I think is taught well just standing up and lecturing. So I didn't use a single video, which is totally fine. Just because I've got flipped learning does not mean I have to use a video. So I think actually the first one, and same thing for ecology, the first one I used in biology was in matter and atoms, because there is a little bit there, but actually I didn't. Never mind. There's not one there either. Macromolecules. I did not introduce screencasting to biology until macromolecules, but students would go to this, they would see the podcast and they'd click on it and a video would pop up and play on the website. So it was very streamlined for them. They didn't have to, click to A, B, C, and D or whatever. The other thing I started to do, or I'll show you chemistry, very similar in chemistry, I always post quizzes after they take them so they can go back and review, and usually I will screencast a key. And I'll do it when I make the quiz. It'll take me 10 minutes with Jing, 5 minutes with Jing. And just real quick, not even explain it, just say this is what you do first, then this, here's your answer. And it's really, really quick. And so when they get their quiz back, instead of coming up to me and saying, Mr. Bennett, why did I get number 3 wrong? And sucking up my time, they can just go to the website and listen to that. Same thing here, podcasts. I always would post practice, and none of this is required. I don't take any of this for homework grades because they would just copy it. And so when kids ask, Mr. Bennett, I watched the ionic bonding video, what do I do now? And I say, okay, have you looked at the ionic compounds worksheet? And they would say yes or no. If they say no, I would say go check that out. If they said yes, I would give them a quiz on the spot, just a quick little formative check. And so we're all teachers or trainers in some way, and we know if we ask someone, hey, can you explain this? Well, it's kind of like about the water and stuff. I got that once from a student. It was typed and into a spreadsheet. I had them explain what they learned, and she put in, and it made me laugh so hard because it said this podcast was about the water and bonds and stuff. And I went to her the next day and I said, do you really think I fell for this one? And she never did it again. Yeah, and along those lines, I don't even require that they watch this video. We still have textbooks. We have articles in the classroom. I always give them articles, especially second semester, starting with chapter 5. Oops. I think I started posting articles here. Notes and handouts, worksheets. Yeah, anyways. This year I've got like a good video library, but I need to get more reading in. So my kids are going to do an article every single week. And I'm going to start crowdsourcing the articles from them, because what'll happen is someone will say, Mr. Bennett, I watched your acids and bases video. I still didn't really get it, so I found this other thing on YouTube. Is that okay? And I say, yes, that's great. That's awesome. That's what you're supposed to do. And I thought about even making worse videos on purpose this year and seeing like how well they do. I probably won't do that, but then what I can do is I can take those and I'll just say, hey, here's something else that Tyler found, and I'll share it out to the rest of my kids. So now he's kind of the expert on this, and now kids are going to start asking him questions and not me, which is good. So I have more time to help the people that really, really need me. The other thing I always include is some kind of creative aspect to whatever we do, and so as we go through the year, I'll say for this particular project, you need to do a Prezi or a Glogster, and I'll limit their choices, but I always give them a choice. So kids that like the presentation style of working, they can do that. The kids that don't like the presentation so much and just want to do kind of a static visual thing, they can do that. And then I'll start, as we go through the year, I'll say, okay, pick what you want to do from this list, and that's fine. You can do that. And notice I have like some podcasting stuff, Screencast-O-Matic and Jing. And then by the end of the year, I'm saying, this is what I'm expecting. Here's your rubric. Choose how you want to do it. You can use this. You can do what you want. And so I would have kids make videos. I had kids make posters. I had kids asked to do a mural. I didn't have any walls they could paint, but I would have loved it. I had kids writing songs, writing stories. We were using blogs, so they were writing poetry. And just, again, building that choice in there. And so for that choice, I use this rubric, and this is a very general rubric, and it might be a little hard to see, but again, I can give you the link to it. But I put it on a 1 to 4 scale because as I was researching rubric making, if I asked you to rate yourself on a 1 to 5 and you felt okay, what are you going to give yourself? 3. It's an easy choice, right? It doesn't mean anything. So I make my kids choose between a 2 and a 3. They have to really be cognizant of where they feel like they are, and then they have to tell me why they graded themselves that way. So there's a lot of metacognition going on in my room, and my kids hate it, but it's good. But I'm not looking at anything specific with this. I mean, I've got my 5 indicators are content, context, cleanliness, conventions, and citations. So I'd say you've got this project coming up. Remember your 5 C's, and they say, oh yeah, the 5 C's, and then they would go. The content, obviously, because I'm doing science, they have to have good science content. That's my job to assess it and to get that across. That's great. But this is the least measured out of any of them. I don't care if you can tell me how atoms bond together. I want to know if you know how they work together, and that's the context piece, and that's got the most weight for me. So when kids are putting stuff together, they have to put some kind of context in it. And I'll take up to 20% off if they don't even include it. I will hammer their grade. And unfortunately, that's kind of the society that we're in, and I don't like doing it, but they know they're accountable for it. And usually I drop that grade anyway. So the context, I always want to know, why is this important? In biology, any science teachers in here? And, so biology, everything is structure in the function. It is built to do a job. If you don't know why it's built that way, you don't know why it works that way. Same thing in chemistry. Everything in history and English, there's cause and effect. A story sets up a certain way, so something else will happen in the end. So the context is huge. Cleanliness, it's got to look good. Conventions, we always have to practice good writing. Even in a science or math classroom, you have to be a good writer. And I use the 6+1 traits of writing. Has anyone heard of that before? It's a method of teaching writing. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. 6+1. I liked it so much in college. I asked my parents for the book for Christmas because it was great. And then I know my mom looked at me like, what? And then citations again. So and just practicing good citizenship. We're pulling so much stuff from the web. So I teach them about Creative Commons. I teach them about public domain, and I teach them about royalty and things like that if you're using music in a video. So really. When I talk to other people about my class, they say, you're really teaching like 3 classes in one. And I say, yeah, and chemistry's down here. I don't really care. They're not all going to be chemists, and I understand that. But focusing on things like this. Let me show you one other thing. I started getting into choice boards. So molecular genetics, everything about DNA, is really, really complicated. It is very layered and hard to understand. And so I thought that the best way to do this would be to PBL it this year. And so instead of just saying, here's your task, I found this thing on a website called daretodifferentiate.com. And it's a wiki space. And it is all about differentiation for Title I programs to exceptional learners, whatever, everything in the middle. And there's this thing, they call it a think-tac-toe or a choice board or a choice grid or whatever you want to call it. But essentially the way this works is that kids can choose any one direction where 3 boxes go in a row, just like tic-tac-toe. So they can go across, they can go up and down, or they can go diagonal. And so I handed this to my kids on the first day of the unit, and if they're looking at it and I'm saying, all right, you're going to be working in groups, this is when the first section is due, the second, third, whatever. And then someone raises their hand and I say, yeah, and they say, Mr. Bennett, these are all really hard. They didn't hear a thing I had said because they're all looking for the easiest row, thinking I had messed it up. But on that wiki space, it shows you how to structure it so each direction they go is equally difficult or equally rigorous or whatever educatorese you want to throw in there. But essentially what it is, it's a knowledge level, so very, very low, just basic idea. There's some kind of analysis piece, so getting up higher, and then there's a synthesis piece as well. So they're just getting the basic information, then they're doing something with it, and then they're putting something new out. They're analyzing something in the middle. And each one of these has them do that, no matter what direction they go. And so what kids would do is they would choose, okay, this is the one we think we want to do. But even then, I would still have groups that would come up and say, Mr. Bennett, we want to do this diagonal, but instead of doing a PowerPoint or a Prezi, can we do a video? Can we make a song? Can we do a Glogster? And again, that choice is built into the thing, so the kids are buying into it. I'm not using gimmicks to do it. I'm just handing them paper, and they choose what to do. And that choice alone is enough to really drive them. And I got some fantastic stuff. I mean, I got some great posters that I tore off my walls and I took to my new school because I liked them so much. Here, let me give you a couple examples, actually. I got to think. What am I looking for? I told you I was making this up as I go. Proposal. Any thoughts while I'm looking through my Google Drive? Anyone? Why can't I find it? I don't know where it is. Oh, let me check my Digo. Okay, so this is a student I taught 3 years ago now, and we were doing chemistry. We got to the end of the year, and we had about 2.5 weeks, and so instead of trying to cram one more chapter down there, and this is kind of when I was learning about choice and realizing that it was a good thing, I said to my students, all right, I want you to pick one idea in chemistry that you were interested in and tie it to something else, and that was the project. Pick something else you're interested in and tell me about it. And so Jean came up and she said, Mr. Bennett, does smelling stuff like have to do with chemistry? And I said, I think so. Go ahead and do it. And so what she did is she went and researched this thing called osmics, which is this huge branch of biochemistry that is totally related to your sense of smell, and how the chemicals that are floating around in the air slam into some receptors inside your nose, which then sends a signal to your nerves, which sends a signal to your brain, and then your brain tells you what you're smelling. But she tied it in, she tied the chemistry into it, and she did this. I mean, this is a website she made. I did not make this. She put this whole thing together, looked up the aldehydes these are organic molecules. So anytime you smell something, it's one of these kinds of molecules. She also tied it into humans, so the biology side of it. Why do we smell certain things? And just because I gave her the option of learning what she wanted to learn about, like, this is awesome. I got to give this to my kids this year in chemistry. Another one that went really well, Facebook pages, like the fake Facebook pages, were like all the rage this year in October, November, December. And so I had some students come up to me. Let me see if I can find. Here we go. Sorry, hang on. Oh, here's one that's good. Okay. I had a student that missed first semester because he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so he came back and we were doing a project on cancer. It just happened to be the time he came back to school. And he came up and he said, Mr. Bennett, I'm getting a lot of questions about my tumor. Can I just do my presentation on that? And so he came to school and it turned out not to be cancer, but there had only been like 50-something recorded cases of this tumor that was in this kid's brain. And so the whole first semester, he and his family were dealing with that, but instead of letting it bog him down, he got to come back to school and teach his classmates about what had happened. It was just amazing to get this from him. Oh yeah, here we go. 1 in 70 in the world, ever. So that's like 1/100 millionth of a percent. So that's something I got this year, again, just because of the choice, because of standing up and teaching. Another one, let's see. I told you, yeah, I'm not. I was living in Korea for 2 years, and I was over there when the tsunami hit Japan. And so I had a student in one of my chemistry classes, and again, the stars aligned. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but we happened to be doing nuclear chemistry at the time, and I had a student come up in here. He said, "Mr. Bennett, can I do a newsletter on nuclear chemistry in general, but also how it relates to Japan?" And so he went through and he did all this research. And made this infographic on how different levels of radiation, how they compare. And we printed it and we put it out in the school newspaper like 3 weeks later. And he made another really good one of Japan that showed, using different colors and again, infographic based on data that he had found online from the tsunami about how it affected the people. So, I mean, do you see like the common pattern here? Just because I'm not standing up and talking for 40 minutes of a class period, I mean, my kids have, I haven't done any of this. And so, when I talk about them, I'm trying to brag on them because I didn't really do anything. I just said, sure, go ahead. But as you're thinking about screen recording, don't just think about, all right, how can I get the content across? Yeah, that's important. But what are you going to do with all that other time? You have to be intentional with it, or else they're just going to be sitting around. And that's the fact of it. And yeah, there's days where it's really going to suck. And there's days where there's kids that are going to be fighting you and nothing's going to go right, and there's going to be times that flop, and that's okay. We have to get things wrong in order to improve. So if I had to give you some, like the big 3 make sure you do's, make sure your kids have access first to the tech, whether it's going to be mobile, web, home, school, wherever. Make sure they can get to it. Second, when you're recording, one idea per video. So one of the criticisms that at the beginning I mentioned was that, okay, if we're recording 1-hour lectures, now kids are going to be watching 7 hours of lecture at home outside of school. That's totally ridiculous. Well, yeah, it's ridiculous because, I can teach something in a very concise pattern if I'm focusing on one thing. So an example of that. When we do DNA in biology, we start with the atoms, and I do like a 4-minute video on what is an atom. And then my next video is like another 4-minute video on how these atoms connect with each other, what's a bond, and how do those electrons stick. Then the next video on top of that is, okay, once we're building, what are the pieces of DNA? You can break it into sub-pieces. And then the next video on top of that. And so I might have a series of 8 or 9 or 10 videos, but they're all like 3 minutes long. And when I got up to like 5 or 6 minutes, my kids would start to complain because they were used to like little 3-minute snippets. And that's not bad, but when you're planning your videos, chunk it as small as you can, because it's better to have a lot of content in individual steps than very few steps with a lot of content. Does that make sense? For example, my first year, I had one video that was 25 minutes long and no one got anything. I had to teach it in class. I lost 2 days of stuff, and so this past year I split it into 5 separate videos. So that's really, really important to make sure that you're doing, and it might mean that you have to go back and redo some stuff, but that's fine. We should be redoing things anyway. And then I had the third thing, but I forgot. Oh, make sure you're intentional with what you're doing. So if you put something into a video, make sure your kids are accountable somehow. Go talk to them the next day. Say, hey, this is something you were supposed to have done today. Where are you at? Let me see your notes. Let me see the worksheet. Let me see this quiz. Something. Make sure you're taking that step. And if they don't have it done, find a mutual solution to why. And you'll find that kids are much more agreeable than when you're just like telling them what to do. So use the video as a starting point. Don't stop there. Don't expect them to get it the first time. They have to have that interaction somewhere. So again, access, very small snippets, chunks, and then be intentional with it. Things not to do, don't assign a video every single day of the week. They will not keep up with it. I usually do 3 a week, no more. And again, these are like 4-minute videos, but I just have so much other stuff going on that's really the starting point. And actually this year, one of the criticisms that I get on Twitter a lot is your kids just watch videos and that's the most important thing about your class. Well, I had my kids write letters to next year's students, and then I wordled those letters. And okay, class, I think it's still important, but you have to make it important. They have to be there for something. So don't just throw video into your classroom and expect things to change, because it's not. I've watched videos. I'm really young, and I remember watching like Film Strip, and it was just another day at school. Nothing was special about it. So class time is still extremely important, but you have to make it important. Another thing not to do, don't make a video and then never go back and revisit it. Every single time I assign a video in my class, what I do is I put just a Google form out, and I put it as a menu item. So for every single chemistry video they watched, they had to tell me, what their name are, what they grade themselves at, and then what can they show me. And I want to change this back to what did you learn, like a one sentence, what did you learn? Because a lot of times I'll have, I think I know what they should be learning in that particular section, but then they all get something totally different. And so that's telling me, okay, something in my communication was not correct, or I did something great that I didn't mean to do, and I need to go back and revisit it. So get that feedback from your kids. So don't just throw a video out there and then never revisit it again. I just read a blog post today about a teacher who was kind of rally crying against using video at all, because there are teachers out there that are just making it once and then sitting down and putting their feet up and letting kids just kind of do their own thing. It's really terrible, and it's making me really frustrated. But I go back and I revise videos every single year. And a lot of times it's not so much because I didn't do a good job the first time, but because for the kids I have this year, it's not doing the job I needed to do. And so I'll go back and add one, or I'll revise it, or I'll just take it out and we'll do something different. So be flexible with what you're doing. Don't just kind of put it there and expect it to work magically. And something else not to do, I don't know. Don't be afraid to take criticism from your students is the other thing. And take it graciously, and let your kids know that you do listen to what their feedback is. And so if they ask you to do something, try it, and then have another discussion, because that really builds the community in your classroom, and the kids feel like they're valued, and that will help drive all of those other things that I was able to show you today. And so my first year doing it, I really asked them a lot of times, hey, did this work? Did you like it? Did you not? Why? Why not? And I would change it. And then they would just come up to me and say, hey, I like this one a lot, and someone else would say I didn't, and I would be able to have that discussion and grow as a teacher. And there were definitely days like that 25-minute video day, I felt terrible because they all came in and they said, we didn't get a thing. This was terrible. And they were just angry with me. And it sucked. But, I was able to grow from it, and I feel much more confident in what I'm doing now. But again, I'm still asking for that reception, or for that feedback. So, we give course evaluation slips at the semester or at the end of the year or something like that. Make it a weekly thing. Really challenge yourself to ask your kids every single week, or every other week at least, how they feel like class is going, what you need to be doing better, what they think they're doing well or not doing well, even as a group. And you'll be surprised about what your kids have to say about their own growth. So I just talked for 40 minutes. I'm sorry.